Jam. This
No, it's happened again.
try to develop and pitch a board game concept in under an hour. I'm Miriam, and I'm joined as always by a metaphorical powerhouse, my sister Georgia.
I'm actually a literal powerhouse.
What even is a powerhouse? I guess like those little buildings that have like transformers in and
Yeah, exactly. There's transformers in there and such.
I don't know. Oh no, have we hit lag time again?
It seems like possibly. What's going on?
Okay. Maybe we'll just have to battle through.
Yeah, we're doing it. We're battling through. It's going to stabilize.
Okay, great. So technical issues aside, we're going to meet our guest this week. It's my longest standing and my hands down coolest friend. It's Will.
Hi, hello. It's
Hello.
wonderful to be here.
Would you mind telling the listener a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I am your very long time elusive friend that is currently residing in Edinburgh, doing lots of wonderful Edinburgh things. It's spring here and there's loads of flowers, and I'm just staring out the window.
Yeah, that's nice, man. Probably gorgeous. Yeah. Will is great. Will's probably like, I guess, at the like lower knowledge end of our board game guests. Like, I know that you like games. You're like into like a sort of niche gaming space.
Yes.
What niche gaming space are you interested in? I must know.
It's one very specific company that me and Miriam have talked about before. That produce a lot of like cultist themed games.
Okay.
And they also recently set up like a whole personal experience where you go to some Welsh manor house and they set up like a sort of role-playing game. Obviously making a lot of money out of it, but I think it sounds...
I'm down if you want to go.
Yeah.
I like Wales. I like role-playing in theory. Okay. Well, so what like that being said, what was the prompt that you brought for our game jam this time?
Okay, the prompt that I brought was synaesthesia.
And what was the reasoning behind this, and did you have any kind of thoughts about a game idea with this?
So I think it's a lot on my mind at the moment for lots of different reasons. I think it's kind of like the cool branch of neurodiversity, like the one that like everyone's like, oh, that's like a superpower. But essentially really similar to like connecting any other two senses or feelings, like spiders and anxiety. So it's a nice parallel to those kinds of things. And I think this, like, you have to, in order to communicate those sorts of connections which are completely random, like 6 and red, you got to like go through a lot of I think using metaphor helps, and like different ways to explain those connections or to make sense of those connections. And I've seen people do like some projects where they think of a random connection, like a coffee machine is like a planet, and the people in the group have to like sort of come up with ideas of how a coffee machine is like a planet, and it's meant to be like a really creative process, supposedly. So in terms of games that are similar, I thought of this one called Wavelength. I really like this game, like just based on like sort of guessing game. It's a bit cooperative because there's teams. I like cooperative games. And it's got this kind of nice like 1960s psychologist aesthetic to it as well, which I really like.
Yeah, I obviously know Wavelength from my kind of board game cafe times, but we recently got introduced to the app by some friends, and there's an app, and instead of being team-based, it's just like each individual person kind of sets 3 clues and 3 dials, and then you set them to the other people, and then however many people there are in the group, the rest of the people who are guessing the dial position, they all have the same dial on their screens and they're all controlling it, kind of like I guess like a Ouija board is a bad metaphor that I'm using there, but
Well, that's going to cause me some editing problems. Can people hear me? See me? Am I here? Hello.
So
I hear Will.
Being recorded.
Oh my God, gang. So I think that probably means that I lost the first part of the recording. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Oh God, is this cursed?
Let's just dive back in as
yeah,
though
we'll just keep going as if nothing's happened, and if I have to cobble this together somehow, I will do it. I'm ready to get cobbling.
At least we've got the illustrations and stuff.
Yeah,
so
yeah, we'll have the drawings. I'll be able to do something with that. Oh, sorry about that, guys. It seems that my internet connection is being absolutely crazy for some reason.
Okay.
So
yeah.
We were just talking about Wavelength when I dropped out, but I was thinking about Concept. You know, it's another communication game. It's another game about sort of making connections, but not quite as much, I guess. When I was thinking about this as a theme, yeah, like connection was definitely sort of the big idea that was coming through to me, but it is particularly about that kind of like unexpected connections or sort of links that aren't typical. Can I ask, Will, do you experience synaesthesia? Is that why was that sort of part of your decision?
No, I don't think so. Maybe everything's on a spectrum.
True.
But I think they have this. Some people try to connect the Kiki Boba experiment, kind of like a sort of synesthesia in a way. I think everyone has that.
Yeah. Okay. Things that I thought about with regards to this, and I guess kind of connecting it to games. I thought about that kind of mental trick where you're like rapidly shown words which are the names of colors and they're written in a different color, and you're meant to name the color, not the word. And I was wondering whether there could be some kind of like reflex call out game that is kind of based on that idea.
There is a reflex call out game that's kind of based on that idea, and it's called Cat Taco Goat Cheese Pizza.
Yes, I mean, yeah. And somebody described a game to me the other day that I didn't recognize, but their description made me think about something. They basically said like there's like a grid of colors and you're meant to say a word that relates to a color and people have to guess, and then you say 2 words. I didn't follow what they were saying, but I mean, if we were making a really abstract game, we could do something along those lines where it's just like you try to say a word that you think people will associate with a different thing. That's very loose, and I don't know how we would sort of implement that. The other thing about synesthesia that I like remember that I find interesting is that I used to read a lot of New Scientist, and like I know that you should sometimes take their science journalism with a pinch of salt, but apparently an experiment that's used on people who have like, you know, like alpha chromatic synesthesia or whatever that's called, is like they will get people to read out letters and they'll put them on different colored backgrounds, and if you're like slower to read the letters that are on the color background that you perceive that letter as, it's like a, it's kind of an indicator. So I thought maybe there could be something there. That's kind of what I've thought about.
I was thinking about how it's synaesthesia supposedly has like memory implications, that it can make people better at remembering things because it makes memories stronger, because there's more connections to them. So people with synaesthesia are better at remembering kind of sequences of numbers or letters, sometimes, depending on what sort of form it takes, because they have this sort of additional bit of data that forms part of the puzzle. So I was kind of thinking about that as like kind of a memory game, something like that. I wonder if it would be worth firstly starting the timer, but also kind of like just noting down sort of some of the forms that synaesthesia takes. Like, what are the typical ones? People talk about like words and colors, letters and colors. What are some things that end up linked? I have a horrible feeling I've dropped out again.
No, we hear you now, but things got mashed up a bit.
Oh God. Okay.
I think there's a type of synesthesia where if you see someone being touched or being in pain, or you see something happen to someone, then you feel an interpretation of that. And that's one type of synesthesia that I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah. Because I mean, there's an existing like sort of mechanism in our brains that does that a little bit. Like, we've got mirror neurons that like allow you to have a sort of sense empathy when you're watching somebody else do or feel something. So I guess that
it's like being squeamish around blood or something.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Nope, I forgot. The only, like, I obviously, like a lot of people, I have the kind of thing where like, yeah, okay, I see some days of the week in certain colors, or like I see some letters in certain colors, but it's not like a strong association I have. The one thing that I've always sort of claimed to have is like certain types of like visual media will make me smell things.
Okay, yeah. So I did note down smells.
Like basically sci-fi. I think because sci-fi has a tendency to just kind of like ick me out on a neurological level, it makes me smell weird smells. Will, you and me saw District 9 together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was definitely a strong one.
It was definitely, I mean, there was definitely a lot of potential for smells in that film.
Yeah. A lot of cat food.
Yeah.
I have started the timer, by the way, Georgia, just in case that got missed.
Yeah. So what about a game where you are doing like memory tricks? Oh, this could be a game with transparent cards, I'm just saying. So you have to like create associations. This is not that different from In the Clearing, I guess, but maybe you'd be remembering like a sequence of numbers or letters, but also colors. So you'd have like a colored background and a letter or number foreground, and then it's kind of they're face down, and you, I don't know, spin a wheel, and it's like find all the vowels, and you just get to keep turning over cards until you're successful, or it's like find all the green ones. Is that boring? That seems boring.
I don't know if it's boring, but yeah, I don't want us to like go back over ground we've covered too hard, I suppose.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like the kind of like match them memory game is definitely well trodden by a previous episode. But
there's definitely space for like number puzzle and like involving like a color element into, and maybe color blending with numbers. Maybe that's a path that you could also take. I think maybe there's also a possibility on the communication side that you're pulling out an association that's already there, and there's you have to maybe communicate that to other people, and then in that way it's sort of, there's a collaborative element to that, or similar to the wavelength.
I think there's definitely potential for that, and it could be it feels like it could be a bit more experimental, like if you're sort of like putting your idea out there and you're like, oh, does anyone else share like my feelings about like you know, like I guess I just sort of imagined there's certain games like Dixit and Mysterium that have kind of illustrations, and I just sort of imagined a situation where you might have like illustrated cards or images that are black and white. What about a game where you have like an array of images and you're trying to like say a color that you associate with the image, and then somebody else guess that, or something like that, kind of like Dixit but much more.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking about like, would it be possible to sort of gather data about what? So I was still thinking about like letters and numbers. Like, could you gather data around the table about what color, for example, people think certain letters or numbers are, that you could then use? I guess this would only work if the players actually experience synaesthesia, so that's maybe not the best. But I was wondering if you could so I've kind of drawn like a Venn diagram with like red, yellow, blue, and then overlapping, like, you know, the secondary colors in the overlaps. And I was thinking about a game where you kind of like, move things into the areas of a Venn diagram to kind of communicate how close someone is to guessing what you're trying to get them to guess, or something like that. I don't know.
There is a Venn diagram game.
Love Venn diagrams. It's my favorite kind of diagram.
But I'm afraid it's a bit all over the shop.
I think you have told me about this, actually, possibly because I'm so vociferously on the record about them being a good type of diagram.
Yeah, I mean, they are very good. Yeah, I kind of wonder, because in that game, it's sort of like a person who's giving clues, it kind of like assigns ideas to the different circles. And then you're meant to, the clue giver is meant to like put cards out into the circles and have the other people guess what the categories are. And I guess the kind of idea of like, at a very basic level, if you were the clue giver, you might decide that like, okay, well, I've got the descriptor strong, I'm going to make that the red circle or whatever, in the hope that that kind of leads people in a certain direction.
Yeah, I think colors have a lot of that potential for, like, everyone can connect colors to sort of emotion and to even like an image of something. Like, even if you don't have synesthesia, like, I think people can generally do that. And it's kind of interesting sometimes when they don't match, like similar to the Kiki Boba example, that you know, you really can't associate anger with red, or so if you're trying to communicate an idea, or like, I think people can come up with a lot of ideas for that, maybe.
Yeah. This is making me think, like, is this sort of something like Concept, but you have much less to work with? So like Concept, kind of the board's got everything you could possibly do to narrow something down. And does this give you kind of less to work with? I also like the idea of, you know, trying to like, Will, you talked about that kind of like creativity exercise where you sort of come up with links that don't naturally exist. Is there something we could do with that where you're sort of, you know, making what I will forever call like a crazy wall, you know, where you're like somehow figuring, have I dropped out again?
No, just I wasn't sure what you meant by crazy wall, and I now understand based on a 2-second illustration.
It's like the Wikipedia game where you have to get to from one page to another through Wikipedia links.
Yeah, wiki walk.
Yeah.
Georgia, it's called Wiki Races.
I like wiki races. Okay, so what about something like that, but it's a game that the players, so rather than moving from like Wikipedia page to Wikipedia page using links, it's about getting from one concept to another to another. So that you have maybe like a start concept. So back to the kind of like Dixit-like cards where they've got like a lot of details maybe, and you're just trying to draw and discard cards and play them into the middle piece to create links across.
Okay, I've actually had an idea based on that.
Okay.
Which is like, okay, if you had an array of cards, kind of like Codenames style, and a clue card kind of Codenames style, you could have like certain spaces which are like mines or bombs, and you're trying to get from like card A to card B and get people to follow a certain route. So you're trying to like every time get people to make a certain connection between two cards that would be next to each other. Does what I'm saying make sense?
Yeah, like, so you're sort of trying to codename someone through a grid by making connections between adjoining concepts. Okay, yeah, I like that. I wonder if there's something about like, you know, the way that like synapses are built in the brain by forming connections. So you're kind of like trying to map a route, like this is kind of an abstract brain representation in some way.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's sort of interesting. Like it's not much of a game. It's not terribly like in depth or anything, but like I sort of feel like it's a fun idea. Like especially if there were multiple possible routes and you had to try and figure out the one that was going to like be easiest to translate.
The thing that would maybe make it less like Codenames and a bit more interesting would be if everyone had some part of the map. So like, let's say there's 3 players and you've got a central grid and each player knows the position of one hazard, but they have to take it in turns to move. Oh, have I disconnected? I'm showing it's unstable again.
I'm just going to turn my video off in case that helps in any way.
Okay, so how much do I need to repeat?
You said something like, let's say there are 3, but that took about 20 seconds because it was very long.
Let's say there are 3. So let's imagine like 3 players with a grid in front of them, and each of them has part of the information about where the hazards are. So I'm drawing like the worst squares, but it's just for like quickness. So each player would, on their turn, move, you know, the little icon, the little thing, to a step, and then they would give a clue that indicated the next safe step that was meant to help the connection form. Do you see what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, so sort of like everybody gets a turn to move.
And then they make their move based on the clue given to them by the previous player.
So it kind of just does hand round the table kind of thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And you have to make like synaesthetic or sort of, you know, you have to make links between the concept of the square you're on and the concept of the adjoining square.
I guess that could be kind of tricky because like you've only been given one clue and it would be easy enough for you to move your piece onto a space that has like somebody else's hazard on, like somebody who wasn't involved in the turn.
Yeah, that is true. Maybe you just deal with that by having like a certain number of lives.
Okay, yeah.
So, you know, you can make a mistake once or twice, but not a lot of times.
Yeah.
or there could be some mechanism in the game where you can like rule out a square. Like
it could also be like multiple rounds on a smaller square, or and then you get points at the end of the round, and you start with a different square, or everyone gets a different card with a square on it.
Okay.
So it might avoid the lives thing.
Yeah, I like the idea of everybody having different information about where hazards are.
Yeah.
One way you could do it would be no, the way I was going to suggest would require probably like a bit too much memory from the group, which would be to like, well, what if like, let's say with 3 players that you do, I don't know, a 4x4 grid. Then each player, like 2 players close their eyes and one of them places a mine, and so on, so that everyone knows where one of them is.
Okay.
Like, yeah, so something like that, so that, and you know what like word or picture or concept or whatever you've placed it under, so it's made of tiles. And then maybe people could use their knowledge of you to know what to avoid, or you could use the information that's available to you to think like, oh, well, it would be easy to steer people away from this one or something.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that works. I'm just trying to I'm trying to like work out whether it's like reconcilable with the idea of like guiding people through a maze. Like, I guess in this version, like everyone knows where the entrance is and where the exit is, and more or less the direction they want to go, and it's just like whether you're avoiding the hazards that's the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be everyone is on the same maze, and then you guess based on your decisions what the other people, what synesthetic connection someone has, if they're simple enough.
So it's kind of like in reverse.
Yeah, if everyone's given from the beginning a connection, then they have to navigate in a particular way, and then there's maybe like a guessing game or I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, I quite like that. I was also thinking,
I'm not
like,
sure I'm following. Can I have a re-explanation of that?
So I go ahead.
Okay. If everyone is given before the game starts a synesthetic connection, then you would have to act based on this connection to navigate the maze. Then other people might be able to infer which connection you have if it was simple enough. It was like if it was just color and number or something, or you might be able to guess.
So I was just imagining a version of this that I don't exactly have, but that would be a little bit more like dominoes. Where like everyone has the tiles or cards or whatever, and you have to build a map, a route through a maze or through a space by placing connected things. But yeah, like maybe it is according to private rules, so that, you know, like everyone has an association of, so cards have a color and a number, but everyone associates colors and numbers differently, so that you can treat any 3 card as if it's also a blue card.
Okay.
So it's like kind of dominoes with secret rules. But then I'm not sure like
it
what
might
the
end
sort of
up
gameplay element is.
Being a little bit overly simplistic, I guess. Like, I've played dominoes games where the whole idea is just like this thing matches to this thing. And yeah, I feel like I do feel like it's maybe more interesting to have like slightly more built up ideas than just colors and numbers kind of thing.
What if it was something where like the synaesthetic rules kind of evolved during play? Maybe I don't have this exactly, but it would be like a card. It's got like a pink 1 and a green 3 on one half, and then you don't have anything that is pink or green or has a 1 or a 3, but you could connect something else that's got, we'll say, like a turquoise 7, and you can say, oh, to me 7 is green, and then that creates, maybe there's like a sort of shared whiteboard that says 7 is green, and then everyone can play according to those rules going forward. And I'm not sure what you're trying to do yet.
No, I'm not sure either.
It's a good evolution. I was separately, if you wanted to expand one of the connections to like a picture of a scene, and it's connected to red, if you have like a room scene, or like a house or a bedroom or a forest or a road, and you have to say that it's green, then in order to communicate that to other people, you would have to pick out parts of the scene that are connected to green, and they might not necessarily be the color. It could be like, I don't know, maybe there's colors don't work there. I'm just thinking you could have, if you have one that's more complicated, then it might have more, it might be less simplistic.
Well, this has sort of made me think about like a dominoes game with pictures. So it would be sort of like partly a graphic thing, so it would have like areas of color, but then maybe there's also other ways in which you could connect it that are more abstract. But again, I kind of like the idea of it being like a linking game, and dominoes has that kind of linking facet to it. But I am realizing that I've played games where you place tiles and stuff, but I've never actually played dominoes, so I do not know how you win or anything like that. Like, is it about building a path from point A to point B on like a board, avoiding some areas of hazard or something? Or
I think the difficulty for me with the like tile placing version of this is that it's either very open-ended, because we're talking synesthesia and you could just be like, yeah, this is the connection I made, deal with it, or it's very like, it's just like, yeah, like you just kind of follow like laws.
Too simple.
Like, yeah, like green equals 4, like.
And you weren't taken by the idea of those rules kind of evolving in play. I guess that just makes it, I'm not sure what that does for it. Okay, so going back to the version where you're like trying to navigate through an already laid map of tiles where some of them are dangerous.
The thing that I'm imagining is like there's pictures, like,
okay,
and I guess that was what sort of, I guess maybe that's also.
The problem in part is that obviously, like, if the icon, if you've got some kind of, a token that you're moving, if the token is here and you need it to move to the adjacent square, what do you do to say, like, what stops you from being like flower? Or if you're not allowed to say flower, what stops you from saying like pollen or another closely associated word? It needs to be something. Like, because if you're only making one move, you're not really talking about the link, you're just talking about the next thing. So I was wondering, like, if you say like honey, then it would tell you to move to the flower and then to the bee, I guess, versus if you say I don't know, like Valentine, then it might tell you to move to the flower and then to the present.
I mean, that's kind of cool, I guess, kind of like a code names style. Like you can choose how many steps you want to do in one go, but you have a limited amount of turns. The other version is maybe like you kind of have the map, like you have the maze map in front of you at the beginning, and you can just try and give people clues that will allow them to connect a given two adjacent tiles, and you just need to get them to place a correct route, and you don't have to do it. There's no moving a piece. It's just you need to connect up a route.
Okay, so I'm not sure I'm following you now. Like, how do you know the route is connected up if you're not?
Like they would be placing little like path pieces. So like in this example, if like flower to present was part of the route that you wanted to get eventually done, you wouldn't need to like start or finish. You could just be like, your first turn could be like to say Valentine, and then that.
Okay, that's not all that different from moving a token to me, but I do see the distinction you're making.
I was thinking about if you're working in teams or pairs, that if one person is trying to, if you have a board where it's a grid, and on each edge of the grid there's a different thing, completely unrelated thing, or you have a starting point that is another thing, then the other person is trying to think of ways that two things are like each other, and they'll take a step towards one edge of the board, depending on what the other person thinks is connected. You could even switch up what's on the edge of the board as well.
Yeah, so I was as you were saying that, I was thinking like that you could place the start and finish tokens. You know, you could randomly select them and place them. The part I didn't understand was like taking a step towards. So
if you have a start point and a start concept or start color or whatever, then your partner knows which one you're supposed to go to, but you don't. So they are trying to think of ways that one thing is like the other, and you are taking steps towards the object that you think they're trying to compare this one to. And then it's a kind of metaphor game, I guess.
Okay, yeah. I think I follow. So in this, would the whole board have concepts?
It could have lots of, maybe it would have lots of different options to navigate, to go towards, and that means that if you take a wrong step, that your partner still has time to sort of direct you away from that one.
Okay, so are you like in the middle in this?
Yeah, you could be in the middle.
And you think that someone's steering you towards the moon, so you take a step towards the moon.
Yeah.
That sort of makes me think that it could be, again, like I'm always feel a little bit cheaped out when a game does this, but sometimes a game is a cooperative game, and like instead of there being a pass fail, it's like you score a certain amount of points based on how good you did. So in that version, it could be like, yeah, you start in the middle, you're trying to get to a space along the edge, and your partner tries to guide you along a path by making connections, or by like getting you to go a certain direction by saying a certain kind of thing. But the aim could be almost like, if you can, in theory, you can do this in one step if you say the right thing, and they're just like, this is the one I'm doing, and they could go direct to that point. Now I'm explaining myself, I'm not making as much sense to myself.
The part I think that I'm not quite following is the idea of making the sort of metaphor between the two things. So like a raven is like a writing desk. Is that steering me towards the raven or towards the writing desk?
if the idea was inspired by what I mentioned at the beginning, where I was yeah, exactly, like mentioning two different things. So you wouldn't be saying that would be what the partner was given at the beginning, that the raven is like the writing desk.
Okay, and
And
then the clue they're giving.
Each clue they're trying to describe how a raven is like a writing desk.
Yeah. So yes. Okay.
Yep.
But then, so my question, I think, is still like, what are they trying to get are they trying to steer the middle player towards the raven, towards the writing desk, or towards both?
They would start on the raven, so they would already know one. Yeah.
Okay, so actually they would start on one of the edges, but they're being steered.
Yeah.
Okay. So something this made me think of, which might be a complete tangent, because I like where we're headed with this, but this made me think about, have you guys, I'm pretty sure Miriam has, you guys read the His Dark Materials books?
Mm-hmm.
Made me think about the alethiometer, which is like kind of just a little metaphor machine.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's supposed to be for telling the future, but like everything on it is a symbol with like layers and layers of symbolism. And when we were talking about symbols being around the edge, that kind of made me think about like maybe a circular board.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where I was going with that, but that was just something I was thinking about.
Oh, I like the aesthetic.
I guess that sort of makes me think, God, I feel like we're not really nailing down any parts of this game yet, but the alethiometer thing combined with your little illustration of the circular things made, like, if you had like concentric boards that you could rotate, you could kind of like try and line up a whole set of things that kind of follow your synesthetic idea. And maybe there could be something like, I'm not quite sure where I'm going, but I'm sort of imagining you could try and like line the thing up, and your partner doesn't watch you do it, and they need to try and figure out like which column is,
or which route they actually are supposed to take.
Yes.
So like this still uses the kind of like one safe route out idea, but you create it by setting up some kind of set of connections that then they have to
and then that could even be like, it could have multiple sort of steps. So you set up one, and let's say you've lined up like 4 things on the 4 rings, where one is a tree and one is a pineapple, one is, I don't know, like a dragon scale or something, and you're talking about like things that have kind of barky exterior. I don't know, this is a really weird example, but like they start in the middle. If they make the connection, they know that that's the path they want to move along. And then you can do like a second step where like now they're on the pineapple, and you can line that up with some other things.
What if they guess wrong? Would you just say that's wrong, and they wouldn't move to the next step?
I'm not sure. Maybe they would just they would be on the wrong thing, and you would just have to try and make a new association from that. So I'm not sure.
Something I was thinking about as you were describing the concentric rings, I was kind of sketching it out. And obviously, like if you pizza slice that so that like each piece is divided into 8, let's say, then you've got a much bigger surface area on the outer ring than you do on the inner ring. So what you could do is have it so that the first ring is where the person starts. The second ring is pizza sliced into 8, but then the ring after that is into 16, and the ring after that is into 32. So that there's always like more options, so that they're not making like a straight 1-to-1 jump. Once they've made the first jump, they have like 2 things that they could move on to from there that you have to set up.
Yeah.
And I sort of like it as like a thing. I like the idea of rotating it like a kind of code wheel and stuff. I'm still not entirely sure what the like.
I think if you have each step is set out for you, like each step is one thing, maybe it removes some of the creativity, but then it also might make it more fixed, less like chaotic. But I mean, maybe not. Maybe it's more simplistic if you are able to move on to, like, you're getting closer, you're getting further away. So but I'm trying to think about how to incorporate that into the rings system, because I think
I definitely I feel like there's a handful of ideas that I like here. I like Will's idea that, crucially, like the bit where you start at point A and you're trying to get your partner to point B, and you're trying to do it like metaphorically, by linking A and B in some way. The thing that I am finding a little, I feel like once you make the connection, then there's not that much gameplay, if you know what I mean. Like, if it's just an A and a B, then you're either going to get it right or wrong. So I was thinking about the same thing, but kind of with like an A, B, C, D. You're trying to make like a number of connections, one after the other, which you could either do on a square board or on this kind of like pizza board, which doesn't have to rotate, but could.
But should. If you have, like, you can incorporate both then, if you don't have just one connection to make, that when you have made once you've navigated to one, then you have to navigate to the other. So it's like a path almost. I mean, that might incorporate both ideas, but then I don't know if it's worse than both.
No, I think something is starting to happen in my brain, but it's not happening properly yet.
Yeah.
What you need is like a starting concept on the inside circle and a finishing concept on the outside circle. And the outside circle obviously has a lot more concepts on it than the inside circle, but I think they should also be like, because you would only have, let's say, 8 starting concepts, it would be possible to make the outside concepts relatively disparate, like not easy to make an immediate connection to. I think you would need a number of concentric circles for this to work. So I think it would need to be 4 movable circles minimum, and maybe 5, but that's a problem for another time. So you, the instructing player, are able, where your teammate is starting, and where you want them to finish, but you have to get them to make the intervening moves by making a metaphor that links the starting point with a concept on the next part of the board. Now, they could either like rotate around and go to that, or they could just hop to it. And then you're trying to get them to connect from there to the next thing, and then from there to the next thing. But like, you've got sort of like different enough ideas that you're trying to, like, you've got to make them make the intervening jumps, like one of those letter puzzles. Have you ever done one of those letter puzzles where there's like a word at the top and a word at the bottom, and you can only change one letter at a time? It's the same kind of idea, like that you have to work out what the intervening metaphors or connections are to get them to the place you want them to go.
Maybe if they get it wrong as well, you would have to try and navigate them
from where they ended up.
Yeah, but back to before, or back to somewhere else, or something like that.
So I now need to raise the question that Georgia raised when I pitched sort of this same idea, like what's stopping you from just being like dice, and they go to the dice thing.
Yeah, so I think the thing that makes this is Will's concept, which I think we probably need to hammer out a bit more, but which is that you have to describe the link between them using a metaphor rather than just saying, go to the dice or anything. So like if your teammate is on the Raven and you want them to get to the writing desk, you kind of have to say Poe wrote on both for it to work.
Okay. Sure. I mean, we can just make that a rule. Like, I don't have a problem with that just being the rule, but I just wanted to point out that, like, yeah, the potential is still there.
Yeah.
To make it a game that's actually about connections feels like it needs some extra step, like just for it not to be.
So yeah, I agree that it needs something to kind of like formalize this idea. So I think part of it is I can't say the names of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it maybe needs to be like a connection, or it needs to be phrased in a particular way.
The thing I'm sort of imagining that might help this, and admittedly makes it feel sort of more less turn-based as a game, is that like possibly the way to force people to make connections rather than just like do step by step where you're going, is that the instructing player would sort of write out the whole route, because then the like moving guessing player doesn't just need to work out like, well, maybe this doesn't actually.
I do like it, but I feel like it has the risk that like unless they have to do a specific sequence of things, and if they get any of them wrong then there is a penalty, then the only thing that matters is the last thing that you get them to do.
Yeah.
So is it the case that that's maybe you draw from a deck of cards that has the symbols and you have to get them to go to an exact set of 5?
Mm-hmm.
And you maybe have to do it like it has to be given in a particular format, like a story, or like the instructions can't just be instructions.
Yeah. Just clock check. We've got 18 minutes left. I don't know. I don't know how to make this a thing actually about connections.
Well, I feel like we have some pretty solid ideas, like some things that I like. I like the idea of these, like this sort of chain of movement. I sort of like that we've ended up with this board of concentric circles. That's quite pleasing to me. I am in favor of it rotating, even if there's no sort of mechanical benefit to that. We know that this feels like a 2-player cooperative game where you're trying to sort of lead someone through like a mind maze. It's sort of like, I mean, I don't know, like for my sort of experience with like not being all that neurotypical is that like I'm making connections inside my head all the time, and I'm not always clear on like which ones are obvious and which ones aren't. So sometimes you have to like sometimes I'll say something out loud because I've been thinking to myself for 10 minutes, and then I have to kind of walk it back and say like, oh, right, like this is because I was thinking about this and this and this and this.
If I can maybe sort of interrupt just because we are on a clock and I don't want to talk over you guys too much. What if there's no route, there's no moving, we just have the concentric circles and we're trying to get to a certain orientation, and that the like instructing player tries to help the guessing player by like, this is the connection that I want between ring A and B. This is the connection that I want between ring B and C. Does that make sense?
Okay, so I think I follow. So they're only allowed to talk like sort of like in terms of connections, and they're connecting concepts between the rings. Are we still keeping my idea that like each ring has more sort of concepts than the one before?
I'm not sure. I think that would still work, but potentially it wouldn't want to be like quite so multiplicitous. Like,
yeah, I like it because I think it's like it does what we've been trying to do, but it's not like it's not sort of too overly complicated. Oh my god, why am I trying to do it this way? Just trying to draw circles is not as easy as you'd think.
Even when you have a circle tool.
Yeah, all right.
No, I
you can be
I
the
know
artist
what you mean.
one
like,
time if you like.
Trying to draw concentric circles is hard.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, I think like, so you would be sort of trying to like steer, you'd be trying to create a particular orientation. What is the, like, how do you know when it's done? Is it just an orientation that you've come up with in your head, or is there like a set objective that you're given?
I guess if I try to think about it, it would maybe be like there's a card and the card tells you that you're like trying to line up
for particular things.
Yeah, but then those things aren't necessarily relevant to the clues you have to give. It's just like, we need this, we need the board to end up like this, and then do it however you want.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I follow. So like, you could be given you've given a card with 4 icons on it, and you have to create an arrangement of those 4 icons so they're all touching, but you don't have to do that with clues that refer to those icons. Is it more interesting if you have to do it without giving clues that refer to those icons?
Yes, I think that is more interesting.
So you would like, first of all, give a clue that linked this thing, and then later give a clue that linked this thing and that thing, but the result is straight through like that.
What were you saying, Will?
If you're given that path on a card, but you're not allowed to kind of maybe describe the links, the individual links on the card, you have to describe the other ones around the circle.
Yeah.
That you could, we've got lots of different choices to get like one circle to line up with another, or
yeah.
And I think the kind of fun thing about this is, admittedly, like, I don't know if maybe the like clue giver would want to have their own like miniature version of the board so that they could play around with it to help
that'd be so cool.
Understand. But like, you, by giving your connection between ring A and ring B, it doesn't necessarily need to be like only 2 specific images that you're connecting. You could be going for more of a general idea, or like there could be multiple pairs that you sort of think work with the clue, kind of thing.
Yeah, I do like the idea of the instructing player having like a little code wheel that represents the board in miniature. because I think that would just be fun to have and play around with and think about. Could we also do things where like the backgrounds of the little segments could also have color and stuff, so that you have other ways of doing it?
Like, oh yeah.
Like, although I guess that's kind of a bit like you would never want to say like, oh, I just want two blue things touching or anything, I guess.
No.
The thing I like about having to do it only through like indirect references is that kind of connects to the theming. Like you can't talk about the actual connection, so you're having to like make other connections. Okay, I think there's something here. I don't know that it's like all the way finished, but I am fairly happy to say that we made a game here today. We just need to know what it's called.
Target something.
I was thinking like Mind Maze. That's probably, there's certainly already something called Mind Maze. I was thinking synapse, like making mind connections.
Yeah.
What about Symaps? PSYMAPS.
Yeah, that's it. PSYMAPS. It's not bad.
Something about twisting.
Something
twisting
about
my words. As you can tell, Will, we quite like to pun.
I mean, I don't. Synaesthesia is a really cool word that would be a cool name for something, but I'm not sure it's quite the right name for this.
No, I mean, unless the kind of like theming and everything that we did on it leaned into that. Like, for example, the like, what if all the images were black and white and you had to try and make color connections or something?
Oh yeah. I don't know. I feel like something in the kind of like mental mind sort of neural map, neural net. Neural pathways.
Yeah.
I don't know. Has anyone got any feelings about anything we've said that might possibly make a name?
No. We got rings.
Mind map.
Yeah. Mind map. I guess that's kind of, I feel like it hits the theme in quite a nice way. Like you're trying to match what the other person's exact like mind map is.
Okay, I think. Oh, go ahead, Will. Sorry.
No, some of the path, like drawing paths on a circle, sort of reminds me of some of those like pentagram ritual circles coming back to the cultism from the beginning.
Oh, okay. I mean, we could definitely bring that theme into the art kind of thing.
Yeah, or like a crop circle.
Yeah.
Ritual something. Oh, now George is drawing a nice logo for Mind Map, so that means it's locked in. It's official.
I like the pods.
Yeah. Looking cool. I like the font. And also I'm a big fan of the like magenta green.
Yeah.
Yeah, I chose magenta and green for the video this month. All right. I feel like we have got most of the way to something that's pretty cool. I don't know if we got all of the way there this time, but we can't get all of the way there in an hour every time.
No.
Will, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything you want our one listener to hear?
Yeah, go start a cult.
Good advice.
Great.
Imagine if there was a cult to our listener.
Just a one-person cult. A one-person audience has made a one-person cult.
Everyone should start their own personal cult and be their own personal Jesus.
Thank you for hosting, Miriam.
No worries.
Beautiful.
Thanks for coming along, Will.
Thank you, listener. We love you, listener.
We love you, listener. Come back next time for more Crow Jam. Good call.